Hello and welcome to another Truth Proof live stream on a Tuesday night, which is a little bit extra for you guys out there. And welcome to the stream, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Les. Yeah, and I hope everybody's suffering like we are with this weather.
Oh.
A bit better tomorrow. Well, no, it's terrible. We've all got to have a bit of it, haven't we? But yeah, I've had a good week other than that, really. So it's great to see these people in here. And I think somebody said it gets him. Oh, Matthew Cook said it gets him away from watching soaps. So yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, that's
most of us don't want to be watching them.
Yeah, so it's really it's pretty good therapy then, really, isn't it?
It's good therapy, yeah. And we've got a few people in. I can only see a few of you, but let's have a look. There's 54 there, so it's Rebecca King, Sober Carper, Adam Sandor. Let's have a look. DM Moon. Let's Kim King, Matthew Cook. We just said Mark Anderson. I know Linny's in. Dogman TP Hunting. I don't know why I didn't just say Phil. I shouldn't keep having to say all that, you know. Stargazer, let's have a look. And there's Alison in doing moderating for us. So thanks, Alison. Warren Hardcastle, Patrick Daniel. Hey, Patrick, them bottoms that you gave me were cliff tops. Absolutely cracking. Thank you. Diane Farrell. And let's have a look. I saw John Body in. I can't see him there, but I did see him. Andy Pollard. Good evening, lads. Good evening. And yeah, all good. We want some questions, people. Levelers in. Good to see you, mate. Scott Lawrence, I'll have to stop.
Yeah, so that's the aim of the game, as Paul just said. Questions time. It's your show. You just give us what you want to talk about, and we'll just get it up there on the screen, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and Lee's in. Lee Roscoe and Zeno and Diane Farrell. As fast as you say it, you've got to say another name, haven't you? Rebecca King. So, what's everybody been doing? Like, has anything been happening?
Yeah.
Because we had a little bit of activity up there, as people know. So, Jeremy's in. That's what brought that one to my mind, because he were part of it. He were involved in it because he comes up there with us. But it's kind of tapered off again, and it's that subtle, Les. It's that subtle. You won't even know it were activity until you start putting it all together.
Well, just before we talk about any of that, Paul, I'll just say at the top of the show now, we are, and I'll give you an exact number. We're 11,975. Nearly 12,000. We're 15 away, and if we get the 15,
you mean 25 away?
The 75. Yep. And if we get those in tonight and reach the 12,000, we will do a mini draw. How's that, Paul?
Yeah, well, we can do that. Yeah. Don't see why not.
Okay, so the mini draw.
I don't look at these numbers, people, but I know Les does. So Al Durham, good to see you. He's and so other than that, I had some good reports in. Had a report in, and all I've said is it's a little village on Wolds, and I wonder, do any of you guys, if you've had an experience or you talk about an experience, do you ever think to yourself, well, I wonder if it'll happen by talking about it? I wonder if something will happen, I'll like stir something up. Has that happened to you? If it has, let us know, because this what happened to this man, and due to his job, all I'm going to say is it's a little village on Wolds, because it's an important job. Lee Patterson Brown, if I think you must be new, mate. Tonya Morrison, good to see you. He ended up talking about something. He contacted me. He gave me a brilliant sighting, which I don't have at the moment to hand. Probably 2019, so it's more than 2 or 3 years ago. And just keep in contact. We email from time to time. And last time I put him in touch with someone who lives in the same village, but they didn't know each other. And I said they were going to talk. And the last time I spoke to him, which would be a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said, have you managed to speak to this lady yet and her husband? Because they share a common interest. He said he hadn't, but obviously me speaking to him must have prompted him to do that. And he says we had about a 3-hour conversation. So something happened afterwards. When he went, I'll read you the email. I'll go through this. Yeah. Let's just get this on screen. Let's have a look. So I've changed his name. It's Ray, and this took place on 24th of September 2024. Hi, Paul. Last night, about 9-ish, saw out of my bathroom window a meteor. Not a huge one, but figured I'd get out with the dog when the wife went to bed to see what was up there, obviously up in the sky, because obviously sometimes it's a bit more that can show up as well. One sec.
Always happens.
Oh, don't. Oh, God. Can do without that. the, oh, yeah. It's nothing. When I say I can do without it, I can do without it ringing. I shouldn't have brought it in. Let's have a look. He figured he'd get out with the dog when his wife went to bed to see what was up there. Obviously, up in the sky. Went with more intention to look at the stars than anything else. By the time he went out, it was getting towards midnight. He was just in the paddocks in the field behind his home, and there's lovely open skies on Wolds, so there's no street lighting. It's totally unpolluted skies. I had to sort something out with the horse because they've got some horses. Then went into the empty field with the dog and turned my torch off. Better view of the sky. This is where it gets interesting. And he just spent 3 hours talking to this lady about unexplained phenomena. And until having the incident in 2019, we'd not seen or experienced anything before or since until this night. Within a minute, I saw a silver stroke grey figure moving west to east on the field behind me. No sounds at all with this whatever it was movement. It looked fairly large in width-wise. It says maybe 5 foot tall, but 3 foot wide. I mean, there's no 3 foot wide humans, despite what people might think, and not at 5 foot tall anyway. So that's interesting. Even more interesting, it was emitting its own light. Although it was dark, the moon was over to the east. And I find that one interesting as well, because the lady who contacted us up at from Fylingdales, probably 2 months ago, she told us that when her and her husband were coming up the hill, I'm going to have to get this. Les, I'm going to have to leave you to this for 2 minutes because, sorry about this, people.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and well, so far it sounds like a great account. Now the thing is with these light anomalies, and I think Lee asked it in the comments actually, why they are always orange coloured, which is a good question, Lee. I mean, a lot of the orbs that Paul has seen, and I've seen a couple, they are all orange in colour. So whether it's orange to how we perceive it, but they're not orange in reality, we don't know. But it's interesting, and we've had for our new film actually, we've had lots of reports of sightings like that over the East Coast, which is and they've been pretty prolific, and we're talking over the last year or two. So they're interesting in themselves. So
Right.
yeah, why the coloured lights that are often seen are orange, Lee? I don't know, but unless Paul's got a thought on that one.
I haven't, but orange lights. And sorry about that, people. I had to get it. We've got a few flats, and I fixed a leak earlier today, and the guy whose leak that were fixed rang me twice. So I'm imagining he's got a leak again. So I'm panicking that water's coming through ceiling. Just ringing to say thank you. So that's all it was. Right. That's that mystery cleared up. Before we get back to that, the orange lights, I don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Because going back to World War, and you've got the Foo Fighters, orange. Lots of people report primarily it's always orange, isn't it? And is that what Lee is asking? Because I haven't seen questions.
Yeah. And the thing is, as I just said earlier while you was out, I mean, it could be that we just perceive it as orange. The actual entities or whatever they are may not be that colour. We don't know.
Well, even if they are entities, I've always wondered if there's anything behind the light. We're looking at this sphere of light, although there has been some rectangular ones reported and cubes, which don't sound very aerodynamic. But I'm looking, and I'm always thinking, I wonder if there's anything behind it. Now, noting the MOD contractor Johnny, his real name, who contacted me years ago and gave me that incredible account. When he looked at them through high-powered binoculars, he claimed that he could see some bronze pyramid-shaped objects within the light, and he'd seen them not up close and personal, but he'd seen them quite close. And
so your theory could be where they're masking something out that we're not seeing.
Well, it might not even
else, and is it the something else behind the glowing orbs that is more of interest?
Probably, but it might not even be masking, Les. It might be just the light that they're emitting is just stopping you seeing whatever the actual object is. Just a thought, people, because as I said many times, the first website, ILF UFO, were intelligent light forms, meaning that could these things just be intelligent light? So do we still want to do this story? I think I better finish it because
if you just want to recap a little bit then for
okay, right, okay then. So hopefully that's not going to ring again. Within a minute he saw we're going backwards a bit. Within a minute he saw a silver grey figure moving west to east in the field behind him. No sounds with it. Looked fairly large width-wise, maybe 5 foot tall, 3 foot wide. We got to that, didn't we? It was like it was emitting its own light, although it was dark and the moon was overcast to the east. Right, so now we get to the next bit. Neither his dog or I think it's his wife's horse reacted. After a minute, he tried to recreate everything. Everything he'd done, including the torch being on, then off to check he'd not mistaken it was anything that could replicate it, from where he was stood looking up into the empty field. Says he could see his neighbour's sheep were in a different field, but he figured it's even go and look to check if one had isolated itself or got into that field of theirs. And, even though he's just said 5 foot tall, 3 foot wide, we know it's not a sheep, but you've got to rule everything out. And that's what this man's doing. Next thing becomes interesting. Got a third up the field, and it's his own field. It's my field, he says. I've walked around it in the night, in the dark, countless hours, and I started to feel anxious and afraid. Now, I'm not going to say nature of this man's job, but it's not kind of thing that he would say. I've never had that in the field before. I managed to get about 2/3 up and my legs had gone to jelly and it was just getting worse. I stopped for a minute and used my torch again. The field and looked in the field where he'd seen the figure. It was empty. Nothing else to be seen. The dog wasn't bothered either. It was running up and down top of field and back, which is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people will say, my dog were terrified, or the dog kind of felt this first, but it seems like it's focused on him. So, okay, I turned my back and in fear and anxiety eased. I turned my back and began to walk back and the fear and anxiety eased. I walked away at the bottom of the field and everything felt normal. So he gave it a few minutes and he tried to replicate it again. And the same thing happened. Stopped again a few minutes in and the whole sensation began to take over him again. The legs feeling like jelly, the total fear. Retreated back a little bit and the sensation lifted and cleared and everything was totally normal. What is it about these are they beings? Is it this intelligence that can put a fear on a person like that? He'd only seen a figure at top of the field. I know it's highly unusual, but he said he walked around a bit more, nothing strange feeling or anything. He says there were no strange noises at that point, only unusual sound were a couple of owls. He did sort of comment that he'd watched some not our live stream, but some live streams, some podcasts, and he'd heard Mike Kellen, the owl man, as people call him in the unexplained circles, talk about owls figuring and being present during periods of unexplained activity. Yeah. I'm not sure how much truth's in that, but that's what Mike Kellen believes, and he thought that were interesting.
Synchronicity, he said as well.
Yeah, the synchronicity of owls, yeah. I have no idea what the figure was. I couldn't even guess. And here he's got it. I do wonder if whatever it was played some of the recent. I played some of the recent stuff through my mind, and do wonder if it used it against me, some of the things I had been talking about earlier and some of the things I had been thinking, or even if his own mind was just playing tricks on him. I suppose we've got to ask all these things. All I can say is it was strange. I felt more anxious, stroke freer than when I've done a lot of stuff at work where I knew I would be facing a real threat. My dog, he can't rationalize it. My dog just did not react. It's a powerful German Shepherd, and it didn't appear to notice a damn thing. And then he's just signed it, and that's the end of it. So what do you people think to that? I mean, I think it's an interesting story. It reads a bit disjointed, but
yeah. I mean, what pricks my ears up there is that he felt the fear, but his dog acted normally.
Absolutely normal. It's almost as though whatever it was directed it to him. And he said that he's walked around that field at night, never felt anything before. Nature of his job sees him in awkward situations, let's put it that way, and don't really, you'll just face us fear straight in the eyes. But have we got any questions to add to that, Les?
Not to that as yet, but I'll start with a question from Gillian Stapleton. Paul, do you ever think you have been followed home by anything from the cliff tops, physical or paranormal?
I don't know. If my wife were here now, she'd tell you that. I'm not saying it's someone that's followed us home. It's been raining. We've not been, well, although we have been up there, but people have asked if we've had any of those little stones in hallway since when you'd hear them cracking on laminate. And last night, when we went to bed, and I weren't asleep, we'd not been in bed long, and there were 4 cracking sounds in the hallway. I got up, there was nothing there. I'll tell you what were interesting. I weren't going to say this, but what were interesting, probably just coincidence, but the clock said 11:11. You know? But I've heard people talk about 11:11 before. But other than that, nothing. Have we been followed home by anything? It's difficult to say. Because Les will tell you that I've just been putting a short together today, which I rendered off and sent him to have a look at. And it's not so much followed home, but it's a collection of strange things that on their own would seem like nothing. But when you put them together, I mean, there's about 4 things that in it, Les, isn't there? You've watched it today.
And then what I picked up on, obviously, was the short time period that these things had happened, mainly in June.
Yeah.
And so as you say, when you put it together, it's odd, very odd.
It is odd. You know, we've got Ian who's in chat, and I think Jeremy who's in chat who use the tracking on their phone to tell anybody who finds the phone or they want to know where they are, plot their journey where they are. It tracks it. They've got different apps for their tracking on the phones. And this particular night, it showed Jeremy out at sea. We're only on cliff tops because I had to laugh because Ken, who were up with us on cliff tops, called him Jesus. He said, "Well done, Jesus," because it did make me laugh. Just how he'd come out with it real quick. It showed Ian walking 5 miles inland, or all of us. So it's different applications, different satellites. I would think, I could be wrong, that are supplying this information or tracking our movements. Yet we've got one man going out to sea, we've got one man going 5 miles inland, and we're all together on cliff tops. And I think you'll have to correct me, and I think it was same night, driving home. There's a strange. First of all, he were 1.5 miles before his dash cam began recording, and as soon as he starts his car, the dash cam starts recording. And when it did start recording, I mean, people could say it's just a glitch, but when it did start recording, you've got a series of about, the car's driving, actually, he's driving for about, I don't know, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then you've got a series of clicks, very loud clicks that just peak one by one. And then a bit further down the road, it does it. I mean, we can always say it's a glitch, but strange things. You know, we've got that first incident with the tracking, and then we've got his dash cam that's not recording, and then I think the journey, I can't remember, I think the journey showed this 5 mile journey traveling at 8 miles per hour. There's a bit more to it, but I've just been going through it it might be an interesting one.
It's an interesting one. Right then, John, Paul Body. Hi, Paul. What do you think about vampires? They go hand in hand with werewolves within folklore, but I don't come across any modern day reports, do you?
It's a strange one, John, that, isn't it? Because I think as soon as somebody talks about werewolves, it's almost, you get the roll of the eyes like you used to get when you talked about UFOs. Because I'm not saying, oh, everybody believes the UFO is here now, but I think there's a lot more acceptance. But there's absolutely, unless you've seen one of these things up close and personal, or you've had experience of, we'll stay with the werewolf for argument's sake, or you've had experience with something like that, how do you bend your head around it? I don't blame anybody that says I'll not believe that until I see it for myself. You know, because it really is a difficult one to get your head around. Plus the fact that Hollywood and movies have shaped the werewolf into the way we perceive them. And we imagine that it's this lycanthropy and the transformation, and they can only be killed with silver bullets. And that's not the way it's depicted. That's not the way it is in folklore. If these things are real, you know, I mean, and it's across all cultures, spanning continents. It's not just the wolf. It was talked about it before in Sierra Leone. It was the leopard men of Sierra Leone who believed that they could transform. There were crocodile men in another part. I mean, there's either no truth in it and it's all a load of rubbish, or there's some reality to it. And we wouldn't have invested as much time in Wolflands talking to these genuine people if I didn't think there's some reality to it. Do I think there's some kind of transformation taking place? I don't actually know, but that doesn't mean I'm right or wrong.
I think what you said earlier, that Hollywood has shaped our thoughts and the way we perceive vampires, but I kind of transpose that now to modern day Satanism, Paul.
Well,
the act is still the same.
Well, it is, but you know how people think, and I don't know what John's thinking when he says vampires, but you know what the sort of image that's conjured in people's minds when that, when you're thinking of Count Dracula and you're thinking of
and a transformation,
something, and once again the transformation from man to bat, which I think is completely impossible. But I don't know what to think, John, and I think on either last week's live stream or one before, I did ask someone, and that might be why you're asking the question, if anybody's got any knowledge of anything like that. I mean, you hear people talk about energy vampires, people who drain your energy, and some people are very, very taxing to be around, aren't they? And you just feel worn out when you're around them. So maybe it's nothing to do with the extraction of blood. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. What does anybody think? Has anybody got any experience of this? I noticed Josh Turner on Paranormal Roundtable were talking about it months ago, and I thought it is an interesting one because it doesn't get talked about, and I'm not, I'll only talk about it if somebody wants to start throwing the rat in the ring and giving us some accounts. It's not something that's come to me at all. The actual werewolf stroke dogman type accounts just keep coming in. People keep seeing these things, and it's a truly terrifying concept. And we still find ourselves in these forests and woodlands. Maybe we shouldn't get in there as much. We might be regretting what we're doing.
Dogman TP Hunting, Paul, do you have more sightings of UFOs alone or in a group?
Do you know something, Phil? Because I'm not going to say that. Well, I'm saying it now, Anna. Dogman TP Hunting. Now, do you know something, Phil? I think the majority of the reports come as standalone, witnesses who are alone. But obviously, there are hundreds, if not thousands out there that are multiple, and sometimes large groups of people get to see these things. I've heard of people at rock concerts seeing a UFO and things, but I would have said as a whole, the reports that come to me, it's single people. The experiences, not just UFO related, seem to be singular, and I don't know whether that's deliberate or just the way it is. I don't know.
Okay, and Zeno, how about the fact we're approaching the 31st? That's October, the one point in the year which allows such an alignment of gravities that it thins our veil to the lower astral plane.
You could be right, Zeno. But does it need to be the 31st? I know what you're saying, but to me, it just needs to be the combination of the right person or people in the right location for me to make these things happen, the right emotional state, or even the wrong emotional state, depending on the outcome, to make these things happen. Because you can definitely feel when there's a little buzz in air and something's going to happen. I think you can anyway. Before you go to another question, we need to talk just briefly. I did it other week, but I'm not sure if I finished. I expanded on it when we were on about these strange things that have happened over the last few months on the cliff tops as a group of us. Me, Linny, Pete, Jeremy, Mark, who comes up, Mick, and a few others. Well, Mark usually looms out of the darkness. So I'm going to be telling you this, and you're going to say, well, he told us this last week, but there's a bit more to add to it. He looms out of the darkness, 9 o'clock, 9:30, and don't put his torch on much until other week, but now he does. So he put his torch on and just ran it along the contours of the land. And as I said, he touched something that were invisible in the sky, but in the field with us, I feel, and that's what he thinks as well. And it lit up a little white disc, not very bright, and it's there. So now he can't stop doing that because he's hoping it's going to do it again. And forgive me if I've already told you this, but we met Jeremy up there the other week, and he were up there before us, and very foggy. You know, conditions for viewing were poor. He says, I've had an experience. He says, what do you mean? He says, oh no. He says, don't record me. Didn't want me to record the audio. Don't record me. He says, I want to just get my head around it. He said, I'm walking along towards you guys, probably about 150 yards away, along the clifftop path, and he can't see us, or we can't see him at this stage. He says, and in the field, and I'm feeling I have told you guys this, but some of them won't have heard. He said, a disc lit up, a circle lit up for no more than a second, 2 seconds, just lit up or switched on in the mist, 6 foot off ground, about 6 foot round, and vanished. Put his bag down and everything and walked into the field because there's nobody about. And I hope he don't mind me saying this. He said, I tried to communicate with whatever I'd just seen. No cameras. In my mind, I'm saying I won't try and take a picture. You know, because you hear lots and lots of times that if you want to see the phenomena, if you want to interact with it, because it's so elusive, probably that's why nobody gets pictures, don't take a camera with you. And nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And he came back and told us. So, and I know I saw him in here earlier. So tomorrow, if I see you up there tomorrow, Jeremy, we can record this, and then I can kind of play. Or you can come on Sunday. You don't have to go on camera, and because you'll do a better job than me because you saw it, you experienced it. So I find that fascinating that I saw this disc a few days before with Mark, and then Jeremy's seen it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on with, let's have a look. I just, thanks for the monetary donation from TA tonight. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. There we go. Al Durham. Have you got a camera that Bobster could wear? I'm just wondering if this viewpoint could spot things humans wouldn't.
Yeah, you make a good point. And if you look at a few shorts, Al,
you've done some experiments, haven't you?
Yeah, we did. I bought a few harnesses and tried, and it just looks like one of them speeded up Benny Hill sketches. It just don't work. I think you need a bigger dog. Do you know, seriously, because he's everywhere. It's like Roadrunner. But there's a guy, cartoonist, who's done me some cartoons of Bobster, and I'm going to put them together. It's funny that because I printed it today, didn't I, Les? Mm-hmm. So can you guys see that?
Yeah, just let me go full screen with that one, Paul. There we go.
There you go. Tell me if I'm on it. There he is. There's the Bobster.
Yeah. Keep it there. Keep it there. Yeah.
So, thank you for doing me those, and or that, and there's some more, and you never know, we might get a little cartoon with Bobby on it. That would be good, wasn't it? So yeah, we've tried, Al. And a few people have said, can we have Bobcam back on? To me, I thought, if you've never seen Dave Barker's in, Dave and Jojo, and let's have a look, Tino, Enigma, and Adam Sandor, if you've not seen one of our live streams before, and suddenly you see this little dog and camera's just going like that, you probably never watch it again. I know you guys think he's funny. Well, I do as well, but he's probably an acquired taste if you've never seen him before.
Okay.
Roddy Burns.
Mark Anderson, hi Paul. Can I have a plug? I run the Dundee SPI, and we're doing a scout watch at Dundee Observatory this month. Not charging any money, just be good to have like-minded people. We are on Dundee SPI Facebook page. Well,
that's great, that Mark. Yeah, and what we could do if I remember or Les remembers, we'll. No, Mark, you just send me a message and we'll put it on Truth Proof page as well. And I can contact Don and see if he can put it on website. It might not gather loads and loads of people, but it might get you a little bit more interest. Why not? And anybody that wants to plug anything like that, you just fire away. Feel free, because I'm sure if Mark's involved in it, he'll be throwing his heart and soul into it. So that'd be great.
Thank you, Jojo and Rebecca King, for tonight's donations. Also, thank you, much appreciated. Let's have a look. That was right. Going back to how dogs perceive or pick up on things. Mark Anderson is saying that was the same as me. My dog never picked up on anything.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? So what do you think, Mark? And I know you're not going to be able to answer straight away. Do you think that whatever it was that interacted were able to just individually target people, which sort of crushes my idea that whatever happens, it throws this kind of blanket of strangeness over the land and everything seems to know. Hence the crickets go quiet, the birds stop singing. I don't know.
And a little bit of a follow-on from that, from Lee Roscoe question. Paul, how did you go on with the clock falling off the wall?
Forgot about that.
Has Bobster been looking at the wall afterwards by any chance?
No, but he's been looking at the wall again. Don't ask me why. He keeps looking at wall, and you'd imagine there's something there. Me and Mary keep looking at him and saying, "What's he up to?" But yeah, the clock fell off the wall. I did that other week, didn't I? With that, it's got to be lifted on, and it really does have to be lifted on. So I'd forgot about that. Do you know something? And I think we all experience this as a collective. It's nothing. So, sorry, as a singular, it's nothing. But as a collective, like last night, found myself getting up just after midnight and opening bedroom door, looking in all. His dog were asleep or, laid down in kitchen, and had a little wander around. There's nothing, but I definitely heard it. So that's another thing. So you've got the clock falling off the wall. It can't be overactive imagination if a clock that has to be lifted on suddenly can come off wall. I don't know. And I'll tell you what's interesting. Pete, who comes up on the cliff tops with us, his clock fell off wall.
Really?
Yeah. And please help me in chat if you're in. Somebody else's did. And it weren't that I told them our clock had fell off the wall, and they said it. Pete just said to me, "Oh, it's Pete again. Get this." So our clock fell off the wall. People are going to say this is supposed to be about paranormal, but what's he on about a clock? It had to be lifted on. There's no way it should have fell off, and it's still had to be lifted on again. Pete told us prior to that his clock had fell off the wall. Then he went to the doctors and had a consultation, he says, and the clock fell off the wall in the surgery. So
what?
Yep. He'll be laughing his head off now.
You can't write this stuff.
No.
Can you?
What time it was, though.
Okay. Roddy Burns, and welcome everybody who's coming to and found the Truth Proof live stream. And if you're new to the channel, please check out some of the other videos that we've done over the previous 2 or 3 years. How many videos are on there now, Paul? Quite a few.
There's a lot. There's 400 and something. But I'm just reading this. I'm trying to think that you're not joking, Roddy, because I have a few reports of that. I was hiking in Northumberland on Sunday and swear I saw Anubis. No alcohol was involved. Anyone else seen him, and why would he show himself? Can't answer that, mate. But it's a strange one. If you're on the level with that, talk to us afterwards about it. I mean, obviously you're hiking, but were you close 20 villagers? Were you out in the middle of nowhere? Were you in a woodland? It'd be interesting to find out. And I have another story about Anubis or something similar, something akin to that, and that is not far from. Well, I think it was Hornsey, and it happened in a council house. Guy who lived with his mum and dad, of working age, and he had an heart attack, and nobody could ever understand why he'd had one, and he hasn't got an heart condition now, and he's not predicted to have another heart attack, but he did. But his reason was, which he didn't tell anybody at the time, so he was laid in bed, 3-bedroom semi-detached house. He's awake, but he's in bed and the lights are off. I think he said, and this thing, like Anubis, walked through the wall upstairs. Just walked through and walked straight through the other wall, followed by another one. And he's just absolutely mortified by what he's looking at. Says the second one stopped, turned and looked at him and made eye contact, walked towards him and plunged its hand into his chest. Oh. Not physically, no, just that's what happened, and he had a heart attack. So take it to face value. I mean, I've heard the story, and I don't know, but he said they looked like Anubis, so that's why that one just came into my mind then. So there you go. Laura Sinclair, I hope, daughter, you're all right.
Okay, let's have a look at this from Terry Donnelly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said you may have had missing time in the past, Paul. Have you, Liz? Would either of you say yes to a random encounter with a grey if you had the option? Well, just on the outset, I'll say I've experienced no missing time. I'll leave it with you, Paul.
Well, in Night People, I talk about things that happened in childhood, and I think I do think they were missing time. And I also say that a young boy, even in your teens, you're not going to keep a diary about anything that's happened. But an encounter with a grey, if you had the option, I think I've seen them. So that's what that book's basically about. From a little boy to probably about, I don't know, 1997, 98 when it finished. And I don't know how old I would have been then. I'm 61 now. But so somebody do the maths. But that's when it finished. But that's what you would liken these things to. That's if you want to call them aliens, then you call them aliens. But that's what I thought I saw as a small boy. And if I had the option, would I want to see them again? No, I don't think I would. I really wouldn't, because these things, and I'm not an expert here. I can only go on what happened to me. But they're diminutive. They're not physically overpowering or anything, but the fear that it instilled in me, they were just terrifying. And so they don't have to be big and muscular. For some reason, they can instill absolutely terrifying feelings in a person. And it's not something that I'd want to have an encounter with. No.
No, and just to add to that, I don't think I would wish an encounter. But if I, like Paul, was in a position where it was part of my life, part of my growing up, then yeah, I'd feel like what Paul has felt, in complete fear.
It's so difficult, and I'm looking now. There's 187 people in. I've just said I'm 61 year old. I mean, Laura's him, youngest daughter. She knows. Laura's seen and experienced things, and I'll not go into any detail. It'd be up to her if she ever wanted to. But you realise you're laying yourself open by saying you've seen these things. But I feel I'm fairly sane, and I know what I saw, and it stayed with me from a little boy to now. And the stories haven't changed. The memories of them haven't changed. I've not expanded on them. Just, when something like that happens to a person, and I know there'll be people sat in here now or stood, whatever you're doing, who've gone through probably the same or worse, or just one occasion. It never leaves your mind. It never, ever leaves your mind. And throughout my teenage years, throughout the younger years into the teens, I don't think there were any night that I weren't waiting for them. And I've only got a few instances where I saw them. But once it's happened, it can't be undone.
So these experiences are in one of your books, Paul. So if you just want to do a plug for the books and any
Yeah,
DVD,
yeah. Well, I've just ordered some truth proof ones. I've just ordered some more because I ran out of them about 2 or 3 months ago, and people keep asking. But I think I'll probably get them back end at week. And then we've got 4 books, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we've got the Night People, which is my own experiences. So they're all available. Please don't order Truth Proof 1 if you're sat here thinking you wanted to order a book until next week. Make sure I've got them. But all the others are available through the truthproof.uk website, plus on eBay. If you want the Amazon Kindle versions, you can get them all there. And then we've got the documentary that myself and Les have made, Wolflands, and that's available as a DVD. If anybody wants an hard copy, we'll get that sent out. As soon as I get the order, they go out next day. And if you want to get it, otherwise it's on Amazon Prime, Les, isn't it?
That's correct. Rent or buy. So you've got the option.
Rent or buy, Amazon Prime. And we are on with other, but we're very slow. But, life just gets in the way, mate. And there's not what we can do about it, is it?
No, on the truthproof.uk website, you've got a reporting scheme on there as well, Paul. And tell us.
There's a link to the Stratification tool, which I've created with Martin Abbas. Martin's done loads and loads of work on it, and it's basically a questionnaire. If you've had an experience, there's a load of tick boxes and other boxes to give us a few notes about your experience. And we're hoping to collect data and see if we can reveal patterns. It's going to a totally safe, secure website. Martin will look at all these. Not that it matters, he's Dr. Martin Abbas will look at all these. If there's anybody who wants to share their account, and if you want to be anonymous, you can, but if you want to share your account, they'll then come to me and then we can go through them. Or you want to talk about it, then that's fine. But we want it as a place where people who wish to remain anonymous, if that's what you want, where you can send this information in safety of it not going anywhere else. It's just a matter of seeing whether we can just detect patterns in what's happening with the phenomena. And there's lots of questions that probably aren't in other tools of this nature, such as what food you've been eating and your emotional state. There's lots and lots of things that as a doctor as well, Martin's incorporated into this tool, things I wouldn't have thought of. So I think it's worth, go to the truthproof.uk website, download it. It's totally free.
Yeah.
Submit it. It's safe to submit to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Or alternatively, it's the link is in tonight's description of this show, and with instructions on what to do, the email address to send it back to us. So that's all good.
Yeah.
I got a question from Pizza64. Thoughts. Speaking of vampires, let's not forget the chupacabra craze of the 90s, in which a winged alien was draining the blood of sheep and cattle.
It's interesting, that one is, though, isn't it? Because Tony Dodd, who there'll be a lot of people in UK who'll remember Tony and know of his research. 1990s, well, 80s and 90s primarily, Tony were really active, retired police officer. He wrote a brilliant book. If you want to find the book, it'll still be available probably on Amazon or eBay, called Alien Investigator. That really is a good book. I don't read many books, but I enjoyed that. But Tony lived in North Yorkshire, which is not far from where I am. And he talked about the chupacabra and stories of the chupacabra draining the blood of animals in the forests of North Yorkshire. Weird, isn't it, that we're not hearing much about this now? And is it the phenomena itself that's changing? It's I don't know. I don't know whether it's evolving, whether we're just imagining it, whether this creature actually exists. But the chupacabra, if that's how you pronounce it, it was seen all over the world. And it weren't some big, fierce-looking thing. It was a little diminutive thing, as far as I know, but it caused havoc and fear. Brazil and Mexico, that it were reported quite a lot. But I know we got it in North Yorkshire. But Tony were onto something, because there were a lot of animal fatalities in the forests of North Yorkshire. Not just animal fatalities, I need to add as well. And he were talking about this back then in the 1990s, yeah. So you're on the money.
Yeah, and just to add my two pre-worth on this, could it be where you just said, and he's also said it was in the craze of the 90s. Is it something where this entity just comes in and out of our existence just for a short period on Earth and then just disappears for centuries?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, that could be it, Les. Yeah. Just because we're seeing them in 1 decade, prolific, then it seems to fizzle out. Why not? What's interesting, we talked about the orange lights earlier. They've just been seen throughout time. They seem to be the key and the catalyst. People report these spheres of light throughout the full genre of the unexplained. Well, it is with another.
Welsh went, hi, there's a historical legend of the Count of Saint Germain, a guy who existed and never aged, was reputed to be in New Orleans, watched a documentary about vampires, and he was mentioned.
So, well, something to have a look at then, when, to be honest with you, I don't mind. I'd like to have a look at that. It does interest me. It really does interest me. And I'm not saying this as vampirism, but I have spoken to people, and Steve Ashbridge, great friend of mine, and a man who I really trust. And he told me that he went to a party. This isn't vampire, but he went to a party years and years ago when he were in his 20s. He says, and when he went into the room, he says everything were quite dark. He said, and he looked and he turned around, looking into the darkness, and somebody's eyes were red, and he could see these red eyes, and they turned away. And when they turned back, they were normal. I know that's a jump away from your vampire story, but it's always stuck in Steve's mind. He knew what he'd seen. How does that work? Okay. Did he just imagine it?
Okay, Tia is saying, I've been studying fault lines in the UK. I will confirm some details and then email you, Paul. There appears to be a one running parallel to Bempton Coast line.
Yeah, there is, and there's the Bempton Fault. That might be what you're on about, TA. But any information would be great. I need to go through this and thank some people in one of these streams, because I've received quite a lot of letters from a man who's been documenting all of this and doing an absolutely amazing job. But tonight's not the night for it. But I've got a lot of letters with lots of information.
Okay. Enigma about the deer in the gully at Danes Dyke, which was a feature of one of the latest shorts, Paul, for anybody who doesn't know. Was there any signs of footprints or dragging on the footpath? Are the police wildlife unit aware?
First of all, they're very aware. That's all I'll say. And no signs of dragging, no. No signs of a deer cut. And when I say a cut, I don't mean like on the deer, like a track through the grass or the undergrowth from one side as it crossed the road. They've gone over into this gully, and it's not really anywhere that an animal would run, because it's got great big pebbles in the bottom and it's very steep. It doesn't do it justice looking at it with the GoPro, just how steep it is. And I've been going back every time I've gone to Bempton or anywhere, even if I've not been going to Danes Dyke. I've been running through Danes Dyke, parking my car up and having a look to see if there's any more. So no signs of anything. The last one that I found, obviously we masked out the injuries, but there were quite substantial grazing to its face. And I think it's where it's gone over the top as it's been pursued, because I'm not sure there's a paranormal element to this. I think it's people or people with dogs, maybe. I don't know. The dog bit I tend to want to rule out, because there's no signs of a dog attack on the animal. And if it had gone over the top and broke a leg, then obviously the dogs would have caught it. It's difficult. Yeah, I said it before when we did the short. I know that we're a Truth Proof talks about unexplained phenomena, but this is unexplained. This is no less interesting. And let's face it, whatever's doing that to them animals needs stopping. It needs catching. We've got to. I'll do all I can to find out who or what is doing it.
Yeah, and Let's have a look. I'm just going to bring one on now. I've got to bring it on. Let's have a look. Can't find it. I'll come back to that one.
Yeah,
Right,
any day now, Les.
on with the questions. Yeah, I was just looking in the general list there, but I've lost it. Right, so I feel, says John Paul Body, there may be a connection between cattle with blood loss in alien lore and the vampire myth. Also, the Chupacabra legend may play a part. What do you think?
I don't know, John. You know, I can only deal with what I've observed and kind of, I was going to say worked with, but looked at myself. And we stay with the animals, we stay with the deer. And I said, I think it was the work of people. Back in 2017-19, when I was looking at the animal fatalities in another location, but not that far away, I can't imagine what could have done it. I just can't imagine. And there was no blood. You know, it was sound like a broken record once again, don't I? But a sheep, a dirty white colour. The injuries that they'd received, as in the loss of ears and eyes, you'd expect blood loss, but there was no blood, which is, unless they were dead. And then that the injury, those wounds were inflicted on them. I don't know, but Chupacabra legend may play a part. What do I think? I don't know, mate. And I've spoke to you, Anta, and I've said it before. I mean, I'd love to hear you share your views on here. Just let me know.
Okay, Terry Donnelly is thanking you, Paul, for your openness.
It's all we can do, Terry. You know, when you think about it, you guys know as much as I know. You know, as much as Les knows or anybody else in chat. You know, we draw a line because we've got experts, haven't we, that are going to tell us everything. And be open, and if you don't know, say you don't know. And I've got no fear in saying that. It didn't my ego to say I have not got a clue what's happening. You know, it's just the way it is. And these people that tell you that they know what's happening, well, if they knew, we wouldn't be sat here now debating all this strangeness, because we'd think that why go anywhere else? This lady's got the handle on it. So thank you.
Okay, yeah. Mark Anderson, Paul, has anyone ever felt a knowing that the beans are there without seeing anything?
Yeah. And you do feel the presence of things, don't you? I don't mean I feel it all the time, because I don't. But the night that I felt the fear on the north side of Danes Dyke, once again, I was Steve Ashbridge. I didn't see anything, but I felt there was something there. I just felt like there was something going to jump out on me, which was stupid, because there's only open fields to the left, weren't it, and the sea to the right, but it was terrifying. So there was something there, something were projecting that fear on me, a bit like Ray, who we spoke about earlier, when he walked up the field and he felt there was jumping back to Ray just briefly, and I know I've changed his name, but he's going to be Ray forever now for this account. Do you think there was something up the field? I'm asking you guys. You've heard the story, you know as much as me. Do you think there was something at the top of the field that he wasn't supposed to see, and that's why that fear was placed upon him? Because each time he turned around and went back, he'd seen this figure that seemed to be emitting its own light, 5 foot tall, 3 foot wide, and tried to get up the field to check out what he'd seen, and he couldn't do it. I wonder what was at the top of the field, if he'd have had the guts to do it. I don't think I'd have had guts. But I wonder what would have been at the top of the field. It's interesting. Something didn't want him there, did it? So when the fear is placed on people, what is it? Is it saying get out of the area? Is it actually doing it for our own safety? Who knows? I mean, we might be absolutely terrified when this fear is placed on us, but is it doing it for our own safety, to keep us safe, to stop us venturing too close to something or too deep into something that, the situation might become dangerous for us? So we might be looking at the danger from the wrong angle.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Ross Gilbert, going to a stealth camp at Dolby Forest, been delayed due to the weather. Any good place to camp out?
At Dolby? I don't spend a lot of time in Dolby. But you're going to one. There's loads of places up there, isn't there? I mean, you'd find some great places at Harwood Dale, around Broxer, Wycombe Forest. There are loads and loads of places that you'd find good areas to camp, and it all looks same. Let's face it, Ross, doesn't it? I mean, I went somewhere with Chris Wright a few years ago, and the locals around there call it Paradise Valley. So you don't get a lot of footfall. There's beautiful waterfalls and all sorts. I mean, it took us a bit to hike in, but it was absolutely amazing. And we ended up sat looking down into the forest with Jugger Howe, which is the moorland at the back of us. It was brilliant. Loved it. So I think anywhere up around there would be great, Ross.
Definitely. Tonya Morrison, welcome to the show, Tonya. Do you think that when dogmen, etc., run across the roads, that they go into portals because they seem to run in front?
I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting that these beings that people see, be it the dogmen, whatever word you want to use for them, Bigfoot, they seem to be able to run into non-existence. That's fascinating. It's fabulous when people talk about looking at a tree that wide and they look at this huge creature that goes behind the tree and don't come out the other side. How does that work?
Yeah.
They're disappearing into something, but I don't know, Tonya. You know, sorry, Les, but Lisa, who saw with her husband, saw this jelly-shaped oval on the beach at Speeton, 3 foot off the ground, 2 to 3 foot deep, that wide, just hanging there. And I think I said, weren't you tempted to touch it? And they looked around it. Was that a portal that they saw? I don't know. She's on the beach on a bright sunny day. No reflections. There's no glass. There's no ice cream van at top. Things shining. There's nothing. And, you know, I don't know. What is a portal? But
yeah. But I'll pick up on the running thing because whenever people report these dogman type creatures, they seem to run at quite a high speed, don't they, Paul? Keeping up with cars doing 50 miles an hour.
It's brilliant because got a report, and I can't not because don't want to share it with you guys. Can't go into too much detail about it. It's funny how they come in. Got 2 about 3 weeks ago, and Chris Wright, who helped us, major part in Wolflands, helped us enormously. Chris got these reports, and one of them covers one of these alleged creatures running at the side of a car at 65 miles an hour. Yeah, so that's interesting. And then another one is the talk of something running out at a car up around Harwood Dale, which we've just covered, where I think somebody said, where's a good place to camp? And I said, go to Harwood Dale. Maybe you shouldn't go. But it's interesting. So I'm hoping I can cover those 2 in next 2 or 3 weeks when I know the stories, but I want to speak to the witnesses.
Okay, Dogman TP Hunting. I met a head vampire recently at the Crypt in London. Straight up truth, and they were not what I expected. Far more presence about them. Really scared my missus, and she only saw them.
Wow, that's interesting, Phil. And I don't know what, I've no experience. You've more experience of this than me now because I've never met anybody like that. So I wouldn't know how to answer your question. How did you feel? And I know that we're short on time, so it's difficult. But how did you feel? Did you feel that this being, this man, this woman that you met were what's depicted in the movies then, and what people talk about, or was it like you've just said, it was totally different? But I don't know. I mean, we've had you on the live stream. If you would have come out with this when we were on live stream, we could have pushed you a little bit more on it because it's interesting, Phil. It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look.
Well, he said, sorry, Les. He said saw them. So obviously there's more than one. Did they see you? Did they introduce themselves to you? How did you know? But we might have to answer that one later. Let's have a look what Lynn is saying.
All right. Paul, regards the disc thing, the week before I was talking to a guest on the cliff tops about a disc that Kingy had seen outside his house in the daytime. Do you think we have evoked something?
You said that when we were on Cliffs, Ian, and I'm glad that you brought it up because I'd forgot. So Ian always comes up onto Cliffs with us. We'll be there tomorrow night. And obviously it was Mark that saw the disc and myself. Then Jeremy saw it. But Ian talked about a mutual friend, Kingy, as he said, who's got he lives in, Carnaby. He lives in Carnaby, beautiful big garden, and said that on a bright sunny day, he saw a disc lower than the trees, sort of passing through the trees and go through his garden. But we'd been talking about that, a white disc. You're right there, Ian. And so once again, do we sort of stir the phenomena and make its eyelids flicker a bit? And I don't know. It's difficult, but you did point that out. You did mention that the other day. So yeah, I think anything's possible, Ian.
Good question from Lee. Paul, you know the circles and the lights seen popping up from the cliffs land. How do you feel that they may be? Do you feel that they may be monitoring you?
God knows. I don't know, Lee. It's difficult to, we all of us at one time or another up there, and that's how subtle it is, because you kind of just pass it off and so see a little light. I like it if more than one's seen it. It doesn't mean that you don't trust the person who's telling you, but you feel more validated if you've seen it, don't you? Do you know what I mean? So if you've seen a small light just flare up in the grass and then disappear, and we don't just see them in summer, we see them in winter. We've seen them. Myself and Steve Ashbridge used to go to Staxton Wold quite a lot, which is where the RAF base is, RAF Staxton Wold, and we'd go at the back of the base, because I know for a fact that there's somebody up there that does a lot of farm security, and he'd been giving us information about strange things that were happening. But one of the strangest things that we used to see when we were up there were little lights in grass, not far from us, just little chinks of light. But whether it's, I don't think it's anything military monitoring us, Lee, and I don't think that's what you're getting at anyway. But I don't know, just a strange anomaly. And what we need is, Jeremy started putting his tablet on a tripod. Yeah. And camera rolling all the time, and maybe we need 2 or 3 cameras rolling all the time, to be honest.
Okay, I've got a question from right here we go, from Mark Anderson. Paul, I experienced a lot like what you experienced in Night People. I just want to say I was never as brave to talk about them.
Yeah, and I don't think I did, Mark. I don't know how old you are, Mark, but I don't think that has any bearing on it. But I don't think I did. I've seen how it's damaged people talking about it. I spent years. I never spoke to my wife Mary about it for years. Didn't speak to my girls about it until they never had any. Not as intense, but there's something happened to them all. But that's probably a byproduct of being in house with me. But as regards, if you want to call it alien visitation, there's something happened. Strange things happened. I walked around. It'll make sense in a moment. We're going to have a time here, Les, but I'm okay. I walked around Danes Dyke last year with Amanda and my eldest daughter, Sarah. And she started talking to Amanda about something that happened, and talking about waking up in the bedroom, and there's a man in a black suit, fedora hat, looking at her. And I mean, I said, when was this? And she said she'd told me. I'd forgot all about it. There's loads and loads of little things, but brave enough to talk about it. Yeah, is it brave or is it stupid, Mark? It's a strange thing it's a strange thing to talk about. When I wrote Night People, because Whitley Strieber were kind enough to write a few words for Night People, and I contacted Whitley and asked him what he thought I should do, and he said, "Be really careful. Are you sure you want to do it?" Oh yeah. I've not. If you were listening now, I'd still say he said, "Be really careful." He said more actually, but
well, that actually, now you've said that leads me to an interesting question, really, Paul, because since your childhood days, and what was the latest age that you experienced this in your childhood era? Was you 12?
It's weird. It kind of stopped. It stopped.
Yeah,
when we moved to Conisborough, because we lived in this little village, Old Dennerby, it just kind of stopped. It fizzled out. And, God, what an embarrassing thing to say. When I lived at Old Dennerby, they wet the bed. That frightened all the time. If ever we went to Scotland, where my granddad lived, I'd be terrified, thinking, oh, God, am I going to do that? Never did it. Now, it's weird. Ever we stayed at anyone's home, went on holiday, never did it. That house. Once we moved, it stopped. And everything's just about stopped from, we'll say, 14 to, I don't know, till moving to Bridlington, 1993. The little bit subtle things had happened in between, but nothing of any magnitude. And as soon as we moved to Bridlington, I didn't start wet in bed again, people. But as soon as we moved to Bridlington, it began, you know. And weird. I'm just looking at Alison. And are you still okay, Alison? Just give us a thumbs up. Yeah, okay. It started again. It was just like a switch that it started again. And that's why I often say, I wonder if all our lives are kind of pre-mapped out. Frightening concept. And because if they were, there's somebody or something knows when it's lights out, don't they? You know what I mean? It's
yeah. But it's interesting because, you know, you talked in your book about these beings. Was it 3 beings around the bed, and you saw the pictures of your grandparents?
Yeah.
Projected. Yeah. And then all that stops, and then you move to your present house, and then you, as you said earlier, your daughters seem to experience more along them lines, didn't they?
They experienced things. Obviously, the girls. Well, no, they were born. We lived in Sprotborough before that, and don't remember things happening in Sprotborough, but all sorts happened in this house. Yeah. They'll talk about. I think Laura might still be in the drops of light. They were so strange. Picture a teaspoon, just the end of it, like mercury. You'd walk into a room and they just dropped at the floor, or we'd all be sat watching TV. And I mean, all of us, there's 4 girls and Mary in daytime, and everybody would go, and you'd see this thing just drop through ceiling to the floor, and it was just like a drop of shiny silver, and it had just gone. And the guy over the road, Peter, came over numerous times in the 90s and said, I've sat in my front room during the night because he never went to bed. I think I've said this before, damaged his lungs with nature at job he'd done, and he couldn't sleep laying down. He'd still smoke. So he'd sit in his room just watching the world go by, and he'd see lights in our home. He says one night, he said, I thought it was girls in the top bedroom playing with some kind of new light they'd got. He said, there's a ball of light, like ball of red light moving about, and then there's another one, a white light. He says, and I'm looking at them and I can't work it out. And he says, and then literally they dropped at the floor and they were in the next room. Then he says, I went upstairs and woke my wife up, who still lives there, so I'll not say her name because Peter's not with us anymore. And he says, and we watched them. We watched these lights, couldn't work out what it was. Came over one morning, and this was late 1997, and there's a knock at the door, and I think people might know where I'm going with this. If you've read Night People, you will. And one of the girls went to the door, and it's Peter, is your dad in? And I'm in bed, which is unusual because I get up really early. But I could hear this, and I didn't know it were him. And when I woke up and sat on the edge of bed, Mary must have turned around. She said, I don't believe it, you got 3 holes in your back. And that what night, that was the last time. That was the night when these things had been there. And he'd come to tell us that he thought that there were an electrical fault in our house because they were like a welder. He said it was like if you were using a welder. Wow. He says, and he could see rooms lighting up. And he come to see if we were okay. It's a strange world.
Okay, we'll move on then because there's still a few questions. Paul, are you good? Are you good, Paul?
Yeah, far away, yeah.
Okay. Lee Roscoe, well, he's just telling Terry, just buy, you will not regret it. It's all, there's all for on Night People also, and it makes $5 in total.
Yeah.
So the recommendation to buy is what Lee's saying to Terry?
Yeah. Well, do you know, it's up to you, Terry, but yeah, that probably make interesting reading. Sarah contacted me the other day, my daughter, because I sell some on eBay, and she said, Dad, you haven't pressed. She said, have you posted these books? Which I had, and I'm sure the people will have got them, but you've got to press dispatched, and I'd forgot to press. But when I looked on eBay and I looked at my books, there's people selling the books like for £40 and £50 and more. Stupid, just come to me. They're nothing like that. And it said signed copy by Paul Sinclair. I sign every book. Yeah. Every book. You know, you get some prima donnas who'll think I'm not going to sign a book. I could sign 1,000 books with a 20 pence pen. So what's it costing me to sign a book for somebody? Nothing. So I sign every book that I send out, it gets signed.
So there you go, Terry. Recommendations all around. I've got to unashamedly put this one on the screen, Paul. I won't read it.
I think Les was the best in Wolflands. Nice one, Rebecca. What's he paying you?
Thank you, Rebecca.
No, that's
Thank
nice
you.
of you to say.
Yeah.
And I've met Rebecca. She came up onto cliff tops with us, and it was great to spend some time with you.
Bunny Harris, welcome to the show, Bunny. If you're still with us, and when you're at Danes Dyke with the dead deer, did you see the shadow figure behind you? It looked like the figures you described at Bempton Cliffs. Do you think they are the same?
I don't know, Bunny. And do you know, at one point, and I kind of questioned myself, and I said to Les, just look at the film there. There's a looks like the shape of a person in the distance. But do you know, it probably just pareidolia. And what I'd like to see on the cliff tops, when we walked home that night, and Pete goes, "Hey, there's somebody there." There were no mistaking it. It was the shape of a person, and they're walking towards us. When we're looking down just to where we joined the path to go onto the stand, and so we're only looking at 30 foot away, 25, 30 foot, and me and Mick go, "Oh, was that there?" And we walk towards it and it disappears. There's no mistaking it. Well, a lot of that, I mean, obviously the short that we put on were primarily about the deer, but I think a lot of that, just like the pictures that people see, all sorts of things in the pictures, I think a lot of it, we can see what we want to see, can't we? So the shadows, the shapes on the cliff tops, I do think there's something to them. I had to laugh because Carl Dan came a few weeks ago and spent some time with us, and his wife Sarah, and we were all up there on that really foggy night, and he cleared one up for me because I went and wandered off on my own into the fog, disappeared. Just wanted to I don't know. As I'm walking back, I thought I saw somebody walking towards me. And I thought, "Oh, what's this?" And then I couldn't see it, and it were really foggy. And subsequently, I met up with Carl again before he went home, and I just spoke to him, and he said it were me. He said, I did walk towards you, and then I walked back. So he cleared one up. Do you know what I mean? And not everything's paranormal. So, yeah, thanks, Carl.
Okay, and let's have a look. Put this on the screen from Doc Sausage. Alice Paul, do you know anything about the reports of cryptic creatures being spotted around the sea caves in Criccieth?
I don't.
Now, I've been to Criccieth, and it's a very nice place, yeah. But I've not read any reports about cryptids in the sea caves, Doc.
No, it's interesting though, isn't it? You know, when you think of labyrinth of caves that we've got around sort of Flamborough, Bempton and Buckton and Speeton, there's lots of caves, and I read something once where people have been documenting all these caves, and some of them haven't been accessed. Some of them are halfway up cliffs, you know. And there's the Rudston Church cave, which is said to, well, it's not said, it's below the Foghorn at Flamborough. So it might not be on any map called the Rudston Church cave, but they call it that because they say it goes 11 miles inland to Rudston Church. Now, Andy Barmby, who's probably one of the most prolific fishermen around East and North Yorkshire, and he'd be well known in all circles. He's a bass fisherman. He don't eat them, he tags them and lets them go. Great guy. But he said one day he went into the Rudston Church cave, he says, and he just walked in, he says, and I couldn't get to the back of it. He says, and there were a deep water gully, so I couldn't go any further. So is it an old wives' tale that it goes to Rudston? I don't know. But these caves must go miles and miles inland. Yeah. When I was looking into the sheep fatalities back in 17, 18 and 19, one morning, I'm walking on the fields and the sheep really graze everything down to just nothing. And I'm walking on fields and I came across a hole, about 3-inch round. And I'm looking at it, and it's just there on the field. And I must have been over top of, and it must still be there, over the top of some kind of chalk or rock. I don't know, what would you call it? There's a cave, a cavern below it, because I went into the woods and I come back with a long stick and I dropped it down. I didn't bottom it. So when you think about the chalk and the water courses and the over thousands and thousands of years, they're going to erode and wear pathways through, aren't they? So the cave systems, why not think of cryptid type thing existing in cave systems. Somebody once told me at North Landing in one of the caves, and I only got the story once. I spoke to the person, but I've never had it since, that they went in and they saw something about 3 or 4 foot tall with leathery skin, stood with its back in a cave, with its back to them in a cave, and they came out, needless to say. Could have been
they came
yeah,
out
well, I would as well.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, the only thing I would say about the cave systems, and you mentioned Flamborough and Bempton. You had Bempton, you had the RAF base, and you've got 2 other military bases, one near the coast again and one further inland. Could these be linked up by a cave system, Paul, for use by the military?
Who can say? You know, I mean, it's possible, isn't it? I mean, Linney's in again, using Linney as an example because he knows the story. Below RAF Bempton, we know a bricklayer who's just passed away, actually, Anthony Linney. I'm saying it as though you're going to answer me. But he is allegedly bricked up more levels below Bempton. And been rendered over and covered over. So when people say there's only 2 levels to it, there's potentially a lot more, because I've spoken to people who've said, I worked in there and there were only 2 levels. Then I've spoke to other people. There's an ex-military policeman, RAF military police, who said there's a lot more down there. And Dean Dealtry is the man to speak to about that one. But caves, I don't know. There's supposed to be an underground cave that did allegedly come out in foxholes, so that's well inland. And that came up in one of our shorts, in the questions again. In the comments again in one of our shorts, by somebody who was on about it again, that his dad knew of the cave system where these small submarines enter from the sea and come up in foxholes, which I found fascinating, because a lot of people said, oh, what a load of BS. But this guy were talking about it, and then an old lady contacted me who said, during the war, my dad didn't go to war because he worked the land. She says, and one day he took me to show me a little submarine that had come up in an area of water at foxholes. She says, and it was supposed to have come from underneath a cave system underneath Bempton. These 2 people didn't know each other. So this old lady told me a story as a little girl. She saw this. And then this guy, and they call him Darren, and he's in the comments in one of our shorts, just a recent one, he sent a substantial bit of text talking about the underground cave where the submarines used to travel and come up at foxholes. So it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Okay. I messaged him actually the other day. I emailed him because I just want a little bit more info if he's got it.
Do you know, I don't think I've asked this question before. Has anybody asked you this, Paul, from Rod? Like your family are aware of any other families that experience the phenomena rather than the individual? So have you heard of any other families outside your own family?
Do you know, Rod? I don't know if my family experienced it. I think it's just a byproduct of whatever were interacting with me, because I don't think my mum and dad did. And when you think about it, it took me years and years to speak about this. I mean, absolutely years. I'd been married ages before I started talking to Mary about this in any detail. So maybe there are other families or other individuals, but they just sat on it. They don't want to talk about it. There's some incredible accounts out there. I know of some absolutely mind-blowing accounts that will just gut at grave with people. And it's a shame, really, isn't it? So I am aware of people that are experiencing similar things. As a family, I think if I thought about it, Rod, I could come up with a few examples, yeah. I'm probably saying, well, why don't you think about it? But I know we've got a few more questions.
Yeah, and I've got a question from Alderon, I think, post this one. What is it about the soft tissue around the mouth, ears, rectal, colon, animal, and word cases? Does this tissue allow some specific analysis by the government vets, off-world entities, perhaps? What's your thoughts on that?
Difficult, Al, isn't it? But because you know, you're as switched on as anybody, Al, and you would think that some other, let's say, some off-world intelligence is doing this. You'd think with all their technology then and their brain power, why would they want to do that? You'd think they could get all information they wanted. Why would they do it over years and years and years? It's difficult to say, isn't it? I don't know.
I think that's
and the coring out, and you know, genital region, the mouth, the ears, the tongue, all the soft tissue. But once again, it's all areas where you would expect a lot of blood loss, yet there's no blood loss, or very little blood to be found around, on or around the carcass, and it's difficult. I don't know.
Okay, so Bunny Harris, and Bunny Harris is saying, I'm at Bempson next week and Danesnake. What advice have you got for me, please, as I have never been before?
Enjoy it, Bunny. I'm sure you will. Seriously, despite me talking about these deer, which, you know, there's not a lot of people going to be talking about that. There's not a lot of people going in unsociable hours or even looking even into that gully, that cutting, you know, the places where I wander about down there, you don't get no footfall, but there's loads of lovely places. Get walking on that beach at low tide, get in Dyke itself, go to Speeton, just enjoy area. I'm sure you will. We've got some people coming up from Hull Friday night, and you know, and they're just going to soak up the experience as well. But obviously, you're probably talking about going in daytime. I don't think there's anything to be worried about or fearful of. He says as he writes all this stuff.
No, just enjoy the vista. That's what I say. Enjoy the vista. It's beautiful up there, isn't it? Okay. Red Shutter Photography question, if I may. I've never seen any sightings of coloured people as ghosts. It's not a racist remark, just a genuine question. Can't find any reports on that.
No, I wouldn't think it was, but I'm sure there are. You make a good point. You know, I contacted, and I hope it's not a ghost anyway. Go on, Les, and what are you going to say?
Well, I'm kind of wondering. I mean, okay, Red Shutter Photography. Have you seen a ghost yourself? And if you've seen a ghost, then how do they appear? Are they just a mist? Because I think the more vague they are, would it be less likely to tell what colour skin they had anyway?
Yeah, it's a good point. I just want to look at Alison again. Are you still okay? Yeah,
right, Alison. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's you make a good point. And you know, kind of people we try to get on here for live stream. This, you know, the world champion boxer is what's his name? Come on, Les, help me out with this one. Daniel Dubai, I can't pronounce the surname, but I noticed on a podcast that his dad had said that he'd had some strange experiences, strange, weird, and wonderful experiences that followed him about all his life. Well, I've tried to contact him the other day. I'd love to get him on live stream and find out what they were. He just touched on them while he were talking about boxing. And I thought, there's something interesting there. So reached out. So don't necessarily watch this space because nobody's got back to me so far.
No. Dogman TP Hunting for what do you think of the Catholic Church recently acknowledging that UFOs are seen and are also created by one God?
I suppose, Phil, they would say that, wouldn't they? Because that's the narrative that they want to plug. And they might be right. After all, they might be right. We might still be looking at one intelligence, one Godhead that's responsible for everything. But equally, we might not be. But unless they know something we don't know. But they're not going to want to push a different narrative, surely, are they? You know, everything's got to be created by the one God. Because that's the kind of doctrine that they follow. But yes, and they'll accept that UFOs are seen. UFOs, I think they've got one of the biggest archives of the supernatural and the surreal of anywhere in the world, haven't they? So they will have some information, won't they?
Yeah. Just on a sad note, have you had any more congressional hearings happening next year, Paul?
No.
I picked up on something.
No, I haven't. No,
anybody in the chat know about that? Yeah, because I'm sure they're back talking about UFOs. I could be wrong, and if you guys want to put me right in the chat, that'd be good.
I see Freezy Peach, who hasn't put a question on as such, but I've been to Dane's Dyke for 2 days ago. Definitely had weird experienced a weird energy in the woods. Just out of interest, did you go to the beach at the bottom and go up the steps to the left and what it up there? That'd interest me, but it's all interesting. But you know.
Okay, let's have a look at this one from Black Ashoka Paranormal. Hey lads, there are 4 fairy forts in close proximity to my home, and the lights are endlessly seen. I can help but feel this is connected. Not saying they're fairies, but what do you think about it?
What do I think about it? I think it probably is connected, and you know, as much as people kind of smile and roll their eyes when the word fairies is mentioned, as though we're looking at something that flits about like Tinkerbell. We touched on this other week, and you know, I'm coming to the conclusion that the Fae, because you know, when we talk about these beings, when you really get into it and go past this sort of notion of little winged creatures, you're talking about things that can change and mimic other things, and you're talking about things that in folklore appear like today's alien abduction scenarios, and the changelings and the children that are taken away and never seen again. And it's I think that the Fae could be responsible for a lot of what people are seeing and experiencing. The lights, the light form phenomena, much of what we're seeing and experiencing, and the running water and the water spirits and everything. Yeah, just like in some cultures they'd say the jinn is responsible for everything. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but the jinn could be the Fae could be the jinn.
Okay, let's have a look then. Scroll down a bit. Mishi Pop. A bit further up the coast, but have you had any reports from Robin Hood's Bay? I've had a very strange experience there, but more spiritual.
There are reports from up there, similar to what we talk about around the East Yorkshire coast, you know, the light form phenomena. But I'd love to hear about it. I mean, because spiritual reports are no less interesting. So there are, yeah, around Ravenscar as well. All the way up the coast. I mean, you get all the way right up to Skinninggrove and Port Mulgrave. We get cryptid reports or alleged cryptid reports from around Port Mulgrave and up towards Skinninggrove. So it's fascinating. I know that you're not talking about a cryptid type report, but they're still coming from same areas. Sands End, cryptid reports from Sands End.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. David Barker is saying, are you all as skeptical about any subjects in this area? I cannot get my head around cryptids, etc., and I don't know why.
I don't blame you, Dave. Seriously, I don't blame you, because let's face it, if you've not seen something that sounds absolutely ridiculous, it doesn't, you know, it just don't fit into what we can believe exists, then why would you get your head around it? Me personally, after seeing the effect it's had on some of these witnesses that we filmed for Wolflands, and loads and loads of reports that I've had in now, I'm in no doubt that these things exist. But probably not in the real that people want to believe, as in some flesh and blood creature that's somehow evading detection. But I do believe that there's something that looks like what's been described. Something like that does exist. But it's like, Dave, you had that incredible sighting of those lights between Flamborough and Bempton. And some people say, I can't get my head around that. I don't think you saw them. And you said at one point they look like the configuration of a dice. By the way, Dave, I 100% believe you, because your account's never changed, and it's a great story. But likewise, I suppose the UFO phenomena, the light form phenomena, is more believable than the cryptids. So are there any that you and Les are skeptical about? Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, the vampires. Yeah, me too. But I'm happy to be convinced otherwise if somebody's got some stories to share with me, and we can sort of get into the bones of them stories, not just one or two, but look at you know, upwards in the hundreds, which is what we've done with the cryptid reports, you know, the bipedal fur-covered creatures. I mean, if you'd have asked, what's his name now, the guy, the guy who's done the work with Chris Turner and myself, what do they call him? Anyway, he didn't believe in them. What do they call him? Come on, we've had him on live stream. He's working now on the Ancient Britain series, into Weird Britain series. Oh, somebody help me.
I can't think of what you mean.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anyway. But he was the notion that these things weren't real. He's not changed his mind completely, but he's coming round to the fact that there's something. There is some kind of tangible reality to them.
Okay, I'll put this one on the screen, and I think you asked this one last Sunday, Lee, but we'll put it on again. Were there certain ones which were more active than others, or is there a pattern maybe, Paul, to some of this?
No, I think June, particularly in this area, seems very actively, simply because you can go back decades into the accounts, into the reports. That's why this stratification tool and people's experiences is valuable as we're gathering information. But the archives and the newspaper reports do reveal that June is very active. Why, I don't know. That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. Welcome to the show. Truth Proof, could you please mention your contact email address again, please, regarding this is regarding the Cube UFO.
Could you please mention the contact email address again, please, regarding the Cube? Oh, apologies. Yeah, sure. I'm reading the chat because I were hoping somebody were going to put that. Andy McGrath. Thank you, Lee.
Oh,
yeah,
Andy McGrath.
Had put Steve Mehrer up, and it's not Steve Mehrer. It was Andy McGrath, because we've had them both on. But yeah, Andy, great guy to talk to. Really enjoyed spending some time with him recently. But I'm not saying he's come around to being a full believer in the cryptid phenomena, but his stance has changed slightly. I could sense that. So the email address is my email address, Paul Sinclair, all lowercase, 3 letters, ilf@gmail.com. And if you want to email me, I'd love to talk to you about that. That'd be great.
Okay, and I can put that on now.
There you go. Thanks, Les.
There we go. We just got that in there. Okay, let's have a look then. I think we just got a couple more left, and let's have a look. Oh, a few more actually.
I can see one there actually. Do the RSPB people at Bempton experience high strangeness? I don't know. Years ago, I did some work there. I'm going back, 2007, 2009, and I don't mean for Bird Reserve. I did some work there, should I say, anyway. And the guy that they put on to watch us overnight while we were hacking out this concrete and sorting out this job, told us that people in the past had come in and they said they'd seen strange things, which I found fascinating. And they have got a sign up at the moment as you leave the entrance, and I don't know what it means. It might be for some unusual bird. And if Linny, if you're still in, tell us what it says. But it says something akin to, tell us your strange experiences at Bempton. Tell us about your strange experiences at RSPB Bempton. What's that all about? And so I don't know. And I think we're doing loads for tourism in Bempton and East Yorkshire, because there's a lot of people coming wanting to look at the unexplained phenomena.
Okay. Mishy Bob says, thank you,
Thank you.
Paul. I'll send my experience.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
That's good. And let's go back to my question list. Here's some info from Kev Oyston. There are comprehensive videos on YouTube of the underground system at Bempton, recreated digitally, and it's really fascinating. Well,
that's correct. And
have you seen that?
I've seen it because I gave them the discs to recreate it. I didn't create the discs, by the way, but I managed to get some discs that had got all the layout and everything. So they did all that from those discs, and it is fascinating. And it's a Type 1 rotor, Kev. So there's a blueprint for all the Type 1 rotors that the MOD or the RAF built back in the day. I'm not sure when that one were built. I know the RAF came I think it were in 1940, but they revamped it, I think, 1956. And basically, it's supposed to be this blueprint of a Type 1 rotor. So it must be 10-foot thick walls, 12-foot thick ceiling. And you'd think that they built it all underground, but they dig a great big hole and they build it all and then they just fill it all in. But is it just the blueprint of what we see there? Because if we to listen to the people that said that they've sealed over passageways and things, there's more to RAF Bempton than what's shown on the blueprint. And I don't know, but I always get this one in. It's totally out of bounds and it's on private land, so I don't recommend anybody going in and investigating in that particular location.
Tom DeRose, what's your most bizarre encounter you have heard that you genuinely believe in?
God, Tom, there's just so many. You know, not when you said genuinely believing, I mean, all of us, myself included, we could all just be sort of romancing. But you know, you've got to place a bit of faith in people. And if you've got so many people coming forward telling you similar things, then there's got to be a bit of truth attached to it, or a lot of truth in some instances. But there's so many. Recently got that story from Filingdales that I'm dying to meet the witness. I've spoken to them, where this strange thing just crossed the road in front of their vehicle. And I'm hoping that sometime this year, myself and Les are going to be able to meet the witness at the location. So that's as strange as it gets. But there's absolutely loads and loads. There's a lady who lived in Scarborough who contacted me and said she'd met an alien on the train platform at Doncaster, of all places. Yeah. And excuse me, individual, looked quite peculiar, very pale skin, long coat on, hat on, and she's looking at this man, and he starts speaking to her in her mind, and because he can see her curiosity, and they have a conversation on the train without speaking. That's as bizarre as it gets, isn't it? You know, that's just, there's just so many, Tom, and I suppose it depends what genre you want to place your interest in. I like to call this multi-phenomena, but, you know, we've got so many people who just want to sit in the UFO box or the cryptid box. We need to be like a conglomerate. Divided, we're weak. We need to be spread out.
Thanks for the question, Tom. And according to Gary Clark here, according to the news, there's an armada of UFOs coming towards Earth. Wow.
I hope there is, Gary, when you look at some of the things happening in the world. Well, maybe we shouldn't be hopeful. It might not be good, but I don't know. What news is that, Gary? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but what news? You know, it'd be great to see some evidence of this armada, or is it some galactic council that's told somebody in a dream and then they've relayed it? And I'm not trying to belittle what you're saying, but what news is it?
Yeah, and yeah, well, if it's in a red top paper, you're going to be a bit dubious about that, Gary. Right then, here we go. Last question, I think, of the day, Paul.
Okay.
Mark Anderson, Paul, are the beings you feel there to help and protect us?
I don't know. Probably both, Mark. Probably both, and it could be that the same beings. Is it help and protect us, or is it just what they want from us? Because it seems that some people's interactions with these beings and the descriptions of them are similar to what I've described in Night People, which were terrifying, but some people's experiences are brilliant and it absolutely life-changing, and put them on this path where everything's just love and light. So we could all be being lied to we know we are by governments at world, but we could be by these other intelligences. I think it's whatever they want from us, they will portray themselves in whatever manner they want to get what they want from us. Fear seemed to be the thing from me. What they derive from fear, I don't know, but they absolutely terrified me. But
yeah,
and
if you want more thoughts on that, I think they're not here to help and protect us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the mess. The world won't be in the mess that it is in now.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Les. Yes, I can see Alison nodding at that one. So there you go. And
On that
Right,
note, I think we are done, Paul.
we are, and thank you, Alison, because you've stayed with us 40 minutes longer than we said, and thanks everybody for support. Just under 200 people in, and we know it's all a bit off cuff tonight, but it's the way you guys like it, and I don't mind. So thank you.
Okay, so we didn't reach our 12,000 subscribers on tonight's show, but hopefully next Sunday we may have, and we may do a draw for a prize.
Yeah, and just before we do close it down, we say it every week, but if you do want to subscribe, totally free. It just supports us a little bit. So just press the subscribe. And David Hunt, Welsh Wend, Ross Gilbert. Let's just have a look. Anybody I've missed? I know Tino's in. Jane Louise Bowery. Good to see you, Jane. And I think I saw your brother in earlier. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Dan Brown.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for all the questions, everybody. It's been great to read them out.
And Tets, Freezy Peach. I keep saying it. Joanne, are you closing down?
We are going to close this stream down, and we'll see you all with Mr. Carl Crusher on Thursday night.
Carl Crusher, Stuart Farrington.
Yeah, with a bit of luck. Okay, then. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.